Right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. At this time, I'd like to open the November 14th school committee meeting. We've just returned from executive session. Welcome to everybody here and online. We'll open with a roll call vote of the school committee. Michelle Kirkby here.
Good night here. Will Horn here.
Diana Frischella here. Thank you. We're going to open public comment in a second. There's going to be 2 public comment periods this evening. The first one will be more general, and then the second one will be specifically in regards to the school start times and will occur when we get to that portion of the agenda. So again, if you have questions, concerns, comments in person or online around the school start time portion of the agenda, we ask that you wait until we get to that piece. So at this time, I'd like to open public comment. Members of the public are welcome to comment during the public input either here or through Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. We ask that you keep your camera on when making a Zoom comment and that you follow school committee policy for public input, including speaking for no more than 3 minutes and only on topics under the purview of the school committee. And whether you're here in person or on Zoom, please state your name and address for the record. Again, we're looking for comments here that are under the purview of the school committee and not currently related to school start times. We're going to be doing that separately when we get to that portion of the agenda. So is there any public comment right now on other topics?
And online, I see 1 hand raised.
Okay.
Is that hand for school start times, or is it for something else? If it's school start times, please lower it. Otherwise, okay.
No. Okay. Do you want to come and use the mic?
Laurel Scotty, 10 Green Street. It's a simple question. At what point in the agenda is the school times coming up?
Sure. So if the agenda is right here, we're actually rearranging it and it'll be next.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do the agenda slightly out of order this weekend and are going to move school start times ahead of the consent agenda. Before I turn it over to Dr. Marsden and members of the school start time committee, I just wanted to give a brief background on how the school committee got to a place to request a school start time committee be formed. Evaluating the school start times comes out of the strategic plan. It's currently strategy 1.6 under the first pillar of safety, belonging, and well-being. The strategic plan was conducted about 2 years ago. It included focus groups and surveys with community and staff members, as well as additional supporting documents. This information was evaluated by a steering committee that was led by a consulting group to formulate the strategic plan. The strategic plan is online. It's on our homepage. If you're not familiar with it, I invite you to take a look at it. It's utilized by the district to create goals and drive initiatives. So this is in line with strategy 1.6, the school committee asked Dr. Marsden to form a committee to evaluate school start times and make a recommendation to the school committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Marsden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mary Brule and Robert Parker were all the co-chairs of this committee. They will join me up here to do a presentation. We're going to review the actual process which we used for the school start time committee and then give an update on some of the concerns that we've heard and what some of the reactions and things are doing to rectify some of those concerns. So, Michael, you have that on your computer? Michael, are you able to share it on Zoom too?
You have to mirror it up to the Apple TV.
Yeah.
No, he just needs to connect to Apple TV and share the screen.
Yeah.
1 second. Yep. Right.
just go on Apple TV from here on those? Or? Yeah, do that instead?
Yeah, he's got it on set.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. We are just kind of speaking to the process that the School Start Time Committee went through. So one of the first things was some of the medical literature that we reviewed and heard of that suggested that adolescents and teenagers typically need 9.25 hours of sleep per night to promote health. Reduced sleep duration also, we heard, has been associated with many poor health outcomes, including impaired cognitive functioning, school performance, attention, mood, and cardiovascular health, as well as risk-taking and behavior problems. We also heard that adequate sleep is crucial for brain and heart health, both short-term and long-term, and that it's true for children, teenagers, and adolescents. And then we also learned that a natural circadian rhythm changes during adolescence, which makes it extremely hard for most adolescents and teenagers to go to sleep before 10:45, even in ideal environments. So we tried to kind of look at the fact that though that circadian rhythm is impacting them, and so even if we say go to bed earlier, or we, somehow get them into the bed, into the room, their actual circadian rhythm is moving so much that they're not even able to fall asleep until later as a result of it. And so it's setting off their day that they can't get into that sleep cycle early.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the meetings that we had and some of the topics we covered. And before I do that, I believe we had 19 members on our committee. There were 6 teachers, 5 parents, 4 administrators, 2 school committee members, and 2 students. That made up our committee. We started, our first meeting was in February of this past year. In our first meeting, we developed norms. Dr. Hannah Gardner from the University of Miami, who's a parent here in Medfield, was on our committee as well. She presented a lot of research to us. And as a group, we discussed some of the challenges that school start time would possibly bring to us. Our next meeting was in March. What we decided to do was to break up into 6 subcommittees. We felt like we needed to focus our attention on some of these items. So the subcommittees included a committee that looked at some staff considerations, a committee that looked at family student considerations. We had a group that looked at scheduling and a transportation. Another group that looked at extracurricular activities, and a group that looked at communication. And we shared our findings with each other at the conclusion of our meetings. We moved into our April meeting. Michael LaFrancesca, who's the Director of Finance, also oversees the busing here in Medfield, made a presentation to the committee to share with us some of the ins and outs of the bus routes and how that was going to be impacted by a change. Eric Scott, our Director of Budget, spoke to us as well. Eric is, as you know, very involved in scheduling of our events. And one of the things that he shared with us, so I think we'll look at a slide later, 8 or 9 of the 12 TVL schools have already changed to a later start time. So most of our starting times here at the high school have already changed because most teams actually have needed that. Before all of this, most of our sports started at like 3:45, some of our games, and now we're all starting at 4:30. So we've had to accommodate for other schools. So he feels as though the changes that are going to go with a later start time are changes that we've made already from an athletic standpoint. Then we met in May again. We reviewed our public forum that we had. We looked at data from the Tri-Valley League, which I think we'll look at again tonight. And we determined that if there was enough information to vote, we would. And we tried to determine if there was still more information that was needed. So that's a summary of the meetings that we had earlier this year.
As Robert mentioned, we reviewed some of the survey data. We did a family guardian survey data that went to all families in the district. And then we also did a student survey that went to students in grades 8 through 12. The family guardian survey, we sent it to 2,725 emails, and we received 1,341 responses. We kind of looked through most of what we saw and recognized that the percent of people that need an older child to be home for a younger child after school, 89.5% said no, 10.5% said yes. Then we asked what would would it be beneficial for having students home before school to help with that childcare? 79% said no, but 21% said yes, which we noticed was a difference towards the after school piece of things. 94.6% of the survey respondents said that they do not currently need childcare before school. 26.5% said that they do need childcare after school. 14.7% of students walk to school, and 85% take the bus or are driven to school. That led us to making sure that Michael LaFrancesca was also speaking to us about some of the bus routes and the impact on that. For the student themes overall, bedtimes for middle school students were ranged, obviously, but fell mainly within the 9:30 to 10:30 realm, and high school students ranged, but fell predominantly 10:30 to 11:30. And there were really mixed thoughts from the students in terms of the later start time. This is the data that that Robert was referring to about the TBL lead start times that we also reviewed, just kind of taking a look at some of the districts. As Robert had mentioned, all of the districts except for Bellingham, Norton, and Dedham at this point have made the change to a later school start time. So we reflected on that. Looked at some of the elementary and middle school start times as well. Again, tried to hear the maximum amount of time that was needed for buses. And then looked at, we knew that doing a flipping currently of having the elementary students move to a 7:35, 7:40 start time was not something that we were looking at. That it would take 35 minutes at a minimum needed between schedules. That teacher contract workday is 7 hours and 15 minutes. That any recommended schedules would need a discussion of traffic patterns and impact, and that the Medfield before school program is run by the schools and could be increased if that was necessary. Given that, the committee in the May meeting at the forum, we had a conversation and said, based off of what we are talking about, we'll take all of the collection of the data, the information that we've reviewed, the information from the public forum, and all of the shared thoughts, and we would come back to the May meeting. If it felt like the committee members felt at that time that they had enough information, they could vote yes or no to a start time change. If they didn't, we would continue to meet. At that meeting, the committee voted unanimously that yes, they do vote for a change from the 7:40, 8:25, 8:30 current start times. And then they proposed 3 times that were possible. So the school start time committee came up with the start of secondary starting at 8:25, elementary starting at 9, secondary starting at 8:35, elementary starting at 8, secondary starting at 8:43, and elementary starting at 8:08.
Thank you, Mary. So once we made that presentation, or the committee made that presentation to you in June, you voted for us to go forward with it. We started the impact bargaining with the Medfield Teachers Association, as we know that any change, even though the contract gives you the leeway to set the start times, any change of working conditions need to be impact bargaining. So we met, we had meetings in September and early October. We had 4 different meetings. We represented small 5 schools. We reviewed the 3 options for the student day and discussed possible concerns and how it impacted the academic day, instruction and learning. After an agreement was made on the student day, then we transitioned to the teacher workday. So as we said in the previous slide, teacher workday, 7 hours and 15 minutes. We need to see what that looks like in a new revised student day. And how that wrap around the student day. It certainly can look very different, and we try to be creative as possible with that to make sure that it makes sense for the teachers as well. MTA sent update emails to the staff and asked for feedback in terms of their recommendations to the school committee. So basically, this is what we're recommending for the school committee. What are we forgetting? What else should we think about? And they got 9 responses back to that. We reviewed the responses at the last meeting in October, October 7th, went through the responses. All the responses had questions that we wanted from administration. We gave responses. And then the MTA updated their members at their last monthly meeting on the 6th and answered any follow-up questions they had. I have to tell you that the impact bargaining was wonderful. Great group of teachers that volunteered to do that, representatives from every building. We didn't always agree on everything, but we came to some really good compromise in terms of collaboration and doing what's best for kids. So one of the things that came up as an issue, and I know that school committee, you folks have heard this as well, is looking at childcare solutions for next year. So, we have two main childcare providers after school in town, MAP and Kidsborough. So MAP, we've had a conversation with them about expanding, but they still have a waiting list. They've had waiting lists for years. So one of the things that we're asking them to look at is a 4 o'clock option for families that really don't need to have care till 6 o'clock. They might need additional support that might go from the end of school to 4 o'clock, and that would be sufficient for that family. So they're taking a look at that right now. They're not sure if they're going to be able to do that because we've actually gave them additional space this past year for them to expand their program. They still have a waiting list. So Kidsborough, as you know, at the beginning of the year, Kidsborough did not have the lease renewed with Montrose. They had no place to go. They reached out to us, and we came up with a solution with them to have it housed at Blake Middle School. That's been going extremely well. Kidsborough would like to stay there, and they can expand their program as well. They don't have capacity right now, but they could based on what they have for approval in space at Blake Middle. So they're looking at doing expansion for the afternoon for children. They also talked to us about a morning option for middle school kids only. So right now we have situations where we have middle school kids that have dropped off way too early at middle school. And we're not gonna let the kids sit out in the cold. So they come in, but there's not a lot of adult supervision. That's kind of problematic for Nat and his staff. So we looked at possibly expanding the program in the morning for Kidsborough, and they were open to do that as well. Just for middle school students only on site for those folks that may need it. No one may need it, but we're going to try to offer that as, yes, Tim?
A couple people online had asked to speak up. I'm not sure why.
For us to speak up?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Might be something with our wonderful owl we have here. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with Kidsborough, and they will certainly work with us. They've been a great partner. I know that families were kind of stuck at the beginning of the year, and it all worked out real well for the families and for Kidsborough, so we'd like to expand that. The last piece is, and probably the one that we have the most flexibility on, is we have a morning program right now currently at our elementary schools. We can easily expand to do an afternoon program. Elementary schools run by the district to give families that 4 o'clock option, so that we would not have care to 6 o'clock. We wouldn't do anything like that, but we would have an end of school till 4 o'clock in order to accommodate the need, if necessary, for families that need that. So that's something that we can do almost immediately, get that going for September. Not a problem. We have the structure in place in the morning. It's just getting the folks in the structure in the afternoon at an elementary school, whether it's a homework club, whatever that looks like, we'll be able to satisfy any need that folks need for that. So transportation is something that was something identified in the group. And I will say something, I know that one of the things that we talked about in our group was traffic. And, traffic in Medfield is awful anytime in the morning. We know that. My office is on 109. It's gridlock at various times during the day, morning and afternoon. So one of the things that we did is look to my former colleague who's no longer in Westwood anymore. When they did their start time change, they did a traffic study. So I took a look at their traffic study with them. And one of the things, I have to be honest, I know I've told members of the school committee this, they spent $31,000 on that traffic study. And they say that it made absolutely zero impact on their decision. Their traffic is our traffic. It's all 109. So they did not find it useful at all. We made the conscious decision not to use taxpayer money and waste it as far as, not being able to get something out of that traffic study. So I know that that's been something that's been brought up in the past. We didn't. So we chose a different route. So our route was, we wanted to look at what the buses were like and how they would run during those times. So in November, on 2 separate days, our bus company identified the three longest bus routes in elementary, and we ran mock bus routes at the new times. So stopped at the homes. We have GPS monitoring, so we know exactly where they stopped, how long they stopped there, and went through the whole bus route. So bus number 7, the total time on the current route is 35 minutes. And the crosstown time is 8 minutes. So that crosstown time means going from Memorial and Dale over to Wheelock. Okay, that's an issue for elementary school. It's not an issue for the secondary. But even with that 8 minutes, it's currently 35 minutes in the crosstown. Total, excuse me, with the 8 minutes in crosstown. With the new route done at that time, total time was 36 minutes from the first stop at 7:24, not before 7. I wanted to correct that. There was no 6:55 kids going at the bus stop. It's 7:24. The final stop at Memorial, and the crosstown time is 12 minutes. Again, 1 minute more, but a little bit longer crosstown, but it's still 36 minutes within the ballpark of what we're doing right now. Bus 11, the total time right now, one of our longest routes is 42 minutes from the first stop to the final stop at Memorial, with crosstown at 8 minutes. So those 8 minutes are embedded in the 42 minutes. Total time when we did the new route for that exact same route, 33 minutes. From the first stop, starting at 7:15, not 6:55, and the final stop at Memorial School, the crosstown is 6 minutes. Bus 17, total time currently is 38 minutes. Crosstown is 9 minutes for that. In our the new route time, it would be 39 minutes, 1 minute more, with the crosstown being 13. But again, that 13 is embedded in the 39. So it's 1 minute longer. So if you see the elementary transportation with the new route time, there's no real significance. And the reason why these were chosen is because these are the 3 longest elementary routes that we currently have. We look at the secondary transportation. Right now, bus 7 the total time is 14 minutes. That will be 18 minutes in the new route time with the first stop at campus. Again, there's no crosstown there. It goes right from the first stop onto the campus. There's no need to drop off at one school first and then go to the next set of schools across town. Bus 11, total time is 25 minutes now. It'll be 25 minutes at the new start time. And then bus 17, total time, 21 minutes from the first stop, 18 minutes. So it's actually 3 minutes better with a new start time. So that was something that we wanted to look at, what traffic and transportation would be, and we thought this was a better solution than using $31,000 of taxpayer money for a document that may not even influence what our decision might be. So the final recommendations for 25-26, you'll see the current time right now at Medfield High School and Blake Middle School is 7:40 start time with an end at 2:07. The proposed time is an 8:35 start with a student end time at 3:10. The current student time at the elementary school is 8:25, and we're proposing 8 o'clock, so 25 minutes earlier. In the student end time, 2:55 currently, and we're proposing the 2:35 end time. So happy to answer questions from the committee. I know that you're going to open it up, but that's what we have for our overview of the process and what we've done since the times were established or chosen by the committee.
Do you guys have any questions or comments for Dr. Marston?
No, I think it's great that the schools are working to find that after-school option for the parents, because that was their concern for the elementary school. So I think being able to opt out of the elementary school, alleviate many of the concerns starting the elementary 25 minutes earlier. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dr. Marston.
Okay. We'll leave this up here just as reference as we.
Okay, yep, that works. Okay, so where we're at right now is we'll move to public comment. I'll open it in a minute. We're going to run it slightly different in a slightly different manner. Anyone who has a question, comment, or concern, we'll invite you to speak at the mic. After we finish everybody in the room, we'll move to Zoom. The committee is going to sit and listen, and Tim and myself will take notes. Then after we close public comment, we will discuss the questions and the themes that came up during public comment. So at this time, I'd like to open public comment on the topic of school start times. Members of the public are welcome to comment during this period, either here or in Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. We ask that you keep your camera on when making a comment and that you follow school committee policy for public input, including speaking for no more than 3 minutes and on the topic of school start times. And whether you're here or in person, please state your name and address the record. So if people could line up at the mic that would like to speak, and then we can move through individuals who would like to make a comment.
Hi, Erin Martinez, 393 Main Street. And I'm just here as a mom of 3 kids in the school system, but also as a pediatrician and an adolescent medicine specialist. I would just say that this has been a long time coming. The American Academy of Pediatrics issued a policy statement a decade ago recommending later start times for adolescents because of improved attendance, improved mental health outcomes, including decreased suicidality, improved grades, less nicotine and substance use, kind of all the stuff that I know I'm preaching to the choir. You guys have already looked at all this stuff, but just wanted to express my support and, that I think this has been a thorough, long process, and we're obviously at the bottom end of the TVL to even get going with this. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Meredith Chamberlain, 10 Pleasant Street. I did time this. Good evening, Superintendent Marsden and Medfield School Committee. My request to you all is that you listen what I have to say, that you listen to understand and not just to respond. I was a member of the School Start Time Committee. I'm a parent of a high school student and a middle school student, a counseling administrator in another public school district, and co-chair of the Medfield School Building Committee. I care deeply about children and have devoted my life to trying to listen to them and support their needs for the past 23 years. I am here tonight to ask you to reconsider the proposed change start times across all of the Medfield Public Schools. As a committee member, I had the ability to read the comments and see the results of the surveys of both parents/guardians and students. The closest thing I focused on, likely a result of the field I choose to work in, was what the kids are telling me, what the kids said in the survey. What do the students think? Do they want this? And my takeaway from what the hard data showed me was that they didn't. And in the presentation that you just did, you gave exact percentages of what the parents had to say, and you gave a vague statement about what the kids had to say. There is no data to the public about what the kids actually said. As Dr. Marsden published what he and school committee chose as the option to put forward, I was shocked at how drastic it was. I couldn't comprehend why we were ignoring what the majority of our kids have to say. These aren't 9-month-old babies who do not know how to talk. These are well-formed humans with thoughts, ideas, and reasonings behind the way they think and what they need. I do not think that anyone in this room is here to argue about whether or not we would like our children to get more sleep. I think we are all on the same page. But to jump to the assumption that a later school start time will rectify that is a leap that says there is only one problem here, and that is a very dangerous assumption to make. Furthermore, the middle school students were not given the same voice as the high school students. They are the ones in the trenches. They balance both Blake school sports and our youth sports programming. They are the ones playing for the school football team and then rushing off to youth soccer. Please do not tell me you want 12-year-old children to have to cross sports off their lists and stop exploring all the options to them because they no longer have enough time in the afternoon and the evening. I believe there are still no lots at Wheelock to make those fields playable at night. Less than 48 hours ago, I started a petition because kids asked me to. They do not have the power to vote and change who makes up the school committee. Then they do not have anyone following up with them and doing focus groups and exploring with them why they are thinking the way they are. What is happening is adults deciding for them and sending a message that they do not have an equal voice at this table. In less than 48 hours, we have 400 signatures. Have you bothered to look at the names? There are children of school committee members that have signed that petition. To see what the kids are trying to tell you in the comments, are you willing to take the time and care and read them and let them know that they are being heard and that you want to explore this further with them? Or are you looking to move on and get this done? I am not saying all kids don't want the change. What I am saying is that you definitely don't have a consensus, and no one even thought a Dale Street school kid was worth asking. If you are changing elementary times as well, shouldn't we want to hear what they have to say? My comments aren't even including what parents and guardians think. I know we surveyed them, but I think we still have multiple steps to go before we dig deep enough to figure out the fair path forward. I do recognize that me coming up here tonight and organizing this may result in me never being picked for a committee again for the schools. But at the end of the day, the kids are my North Star, and they desperately needed someone to help their voice be at least better heard at the table. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Renee Howley, 3 Harding Street. So I have 2 kids, a junior and a senior, so I'm not impacted for very long by this. And I want to talk briefly about something that I did not hear, that I am alarmed about, that does not impact me. I saw a lot about adding preschool care and adding after-school care. What about the cost that is going to cost families? Have you talked to them? Can they afford that? A lot of these kids that are dropping their middle school students off early, they don't have a choice. They have to go to work. You're now causing them to go to work 40, 45 minutes later. A lot of families can't deal with that. We are not all in the same position in Medfield. This needs to be explored further. The second piece, for my own kid and others, my child's working to help pay for college. He's saving money. He works for a very well-respected local business. They're only open till 5 o'clock. You're removing 35, 40 minutes of his workable hours by doing this. The kids do not want this as a whole. They don't want it. Maybe 3 years from now, if you could set it up and set the right things in place, that these kids know in 3 years when they start high school, this is what it's going to look like. But to throw this on these kids have been guinea pigs my entire time in Medfield. Every time we put a new program in, it affects my kids directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chris Potts, 7 Curve Street. As a parent of 3 grown children, I'm not directly affected by this decision. I am a member of the community who really cares deeply about how decisions are made. And I feel like, and I had mentioned this earlier at another school committee meeting, and for those of you who don't know, I've been going to these meetings for a decade now, and I've seen how decisions are made. I'm disappointed yet again that a public forum was held on this topic without having any data presented, no options about what the start time, the three options were. People came to that public forum. They really didn't have a chance to say anything because there wasn't any specific times presented to them that they could comment on. And I think that was a huge misstep for this committee. I've seen what Westwood did over a 2-year period. They were very comprehensive. And so, and even with the traffic study, you may feel like it wasn't worth it to spend that money on the traffic study, but when I look at the minutes from the meeting, there's no data. This is the first time I heard anything about how the traffic was analyzed. And there was never an opportunity for the school committee to say, no, we don't want to spend that money, or how are we going to look at the traffic, and how much time are the kids going to spend on the bus? There was a lot of data that was never presented at the school committee. And it's really unfair for these parents who are now affected by these decisions not to have had a chance until tonight to speak up about their opinions about this. And I think that's just terribly unfair. And unfortunately, this is a pattern that I've seen over the last 10 years where decisions are made without giving people enough opportunity to provide input when it matters. And so I would recommend that this gets delayed a little bit so more parents have the chance to speak up.
No, I just asked my chair.
Is there anybody else who has comments at this time?
Laurel Scotty, 10 Green Street. You are all elected officials, and you're to represent the people that elected you and how they think and feel. Well, you just heard that over 400 people in less than 48 hours have told you no. And I sincerely hope that you listen to the people you're representing. You're not representing yourselves, you're representing your constituents. And 400 said no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do you want to open it to Zoom?
Yes. Is there any public comment?
I can, thank you.
No, who wants to speak?
Are they raising their hands?
No.
No one's raising their hand?
So far, so one more time, if there's anyone wants to public comment, zoom in. The only comment I had was, sounds good.
Okay. So at this time, we'll close public comment. There's no one else that has anything. Sorry.
Aaron Watson, they're all in the mic. If you can bring Aaron Watson forward. Hello, Aaron. I think she just needs to mute or unmute.
I'm Erin Watson. I'm a third grade teacher. I am also the president of the Medfield TV Association.
Hold on, Aaron, just 1 minute. I was going to turn on the volume.
Is everyone else muted on the Zoom?
Oh, and do you have any, it doesn't say
This is on. I think the computer's on.
Aaron, just bear with us 1 minute.
Okay.
Should be okay now.
Aaron, go ahead.
I think Aaron, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Okay, go
great.
ahead.
Start from the delay, and his name and address first.
Okay. I'm Erin Watson. I teach third grade at the Wheelock School. I've been teaching for 29 years. I'm also the president of the Medfield Teachers Association. I planned on coming in person tonight, and I apologize that I didn't. I had 14 conferences today, so I decided to come home and come on Zoom. One of the things that I wanted to say, I appreciate Meredith's comments. Meredith was part of the panel last year. My concern is that, she did not speak to Mary Brule or Robert Parga. She did not speak to anybody else prior to this. We read through all of the student comments last year. Some of the comments included things like, I don't want to come to school. I'll come to school later, but I want to get out of school earlier. Like, there were comments that were just, that didn't really work for what we were looking for. I understand that that there were students that were against it, but I think now that it's become this public forum, I think there's a lot of students that are, I would say, jumping on the bandwagon to sign a petition. All of the students that were in the high school were surveyed. The middle school was surveyed. The Dale Street students were not surveyed, I think because of their age level. Teachers were asked, parents were asked. When we had our forum that Chris was referring to, there were very few people there. It was well advertised. This has been on the medfield.net website. All of our information has been on there from all of last year. And now all of a sudden it's just become, now it's become a question, and people didn't have questions beforehand. No one was asking questions now. And now we have all these questions, and that's my concern. Teachers, knew that this was coming down the pipeline due to the fact that we had had a contract, and we realized we agreed to discuss it last year. I think that we went through a long process to discuss this, and I think there was a lot of input from a lot of different members. And I just wanted to share that I think that, people writing about lack of transparency and other kinds of things, I don't really think that that was the case.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Is there anybody else online?
No, others online, but nobody's No other public comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment then. We'll turn to the committee. Tim, you want to lead us in some of the themes that came up?
Sure. The themes and I'd love even folks around the committee for the task force to speak. And everyone can bring it up. I'm just let's see. I think the themes that were maybe what was surveys and the impact of were kids on the survey. With this survey, have we considered the cost of adding preschool or after school? That might be something. Talk a little bit about what data was presented, as you're going through the process. I do understand the timing of the survey that had been before we had all the data. Those are the general things. I personally, I'd love to hear you two are on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other theme too was that, whatever we want to call it, like the change form that people are signing. Like, I understand 400 people signed it. Not everyone who signed it lives in Medfield, and you're not legally able to vote if you're like under the age of 18. So I just want to say, like, I think that is in a way disrespectful to say we don't represent our communities, because just because someone may not be sitting here, but we are looking at survey data. We also talk to many people that I think saying those 400 signatures outweigh maybe the 1,300 people who did fill out the survey, should be taken into account. I did look through the names of people who said, signed it. I also think it's important to listen to our students, and I did listen, to Meredith, what you said. I can think back to when I was a child. I have a middle schooler. I respect her feelings and her emotions. She tells me she doesn't want the school time to start, but she's exhausted every day and doesn't want to go to school. But she'd like more time to come home because she'd like to have time to look at her phone, do her homework, and hang out, right? She also doesn't want to get her flu vaccine or COVID vaccine, but I make decisions for my 12-year-old that are in her best interest as an adult and a parent. So although I think that it's important to listen to the student voices, I do think the scientific community and the Academy of Pediatrics, what we've learned is that, it's hard for me as a committee member looking at all this data to outrule the science and what's best for this generation of students, even though, I understand that my child in middle school may not see that yet. But I am much more concerned about suicide rates and depression and anxiety. And how that will show up in all of our students in this community because of lack of sleep versus, figuring out how to play more sports. At the end of the day, I'm committed to making sure our kids get a great education, both socially, emotionally, and academically. And, that's what I think in some regards school time changing will help with. So I know that was based on some of the things I heard. Okay. Will?
I agree with what Diana said. We've got some emails. There's a petition going around signed by kids. I spoke to my own daughter about this in my kitchen. There's any paper, what you say, like, there's all the research says our kids need to sleep more for their mental health, for their anxiety, for their depression, for suicidal thoughts. We need to make that decision for them. I'm a teacher. I'm an advocate for kids, but I don't understand what's going on here. I appreciate it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for my family. My family is overscheduled. They play club sports. They are now losing the hour they have to do homework after school, eventually before they play high school sports, if they continue on this path, to be in class. So the change is going to hurt my family, but I signed up for this job to make the best decisions for all of our children. And every publication, all the research says they need to sleep more so they can be healthier. So if anyone has anything to say about a paper, a study, or something that tells me our kids having the opportunity to sleep more, many of them still won't. Many of them are overscheduled. They have to get up early. They want more time. But we're just not like, it's going to be hard. We got emails about my logistics are hard. Mine are going to be hard. But it is without a doubt, you cannot argue it is the best thing to give our kids the opportunity to sleep more. And that is what we are doing if we vote yes for this. That's all I have to say.
Could I also address the costs? Yeah. And I heard from, right, we did get some emails. You know, I talked to a lot of people in the community, and I do think changing the start time for elementary does, you know, leave some people without childcare. But I also talked to a lot of people who are having a very hard time understanding that they've always paid for childcare and how 25 minutes, like that makes a difference that you need childcare. And on the flip side, we have many parents in the district who have had to pay for before school care because of the time of elementary, despite what might have been shared in some forums. Like, I have talked to very few people in this town who work a traditional 9-to-5 job. I think that most parents, right, have had to adjust their schedule because they were waiting for their elementary school child to be picked up. And there's many people in this district who actually are appreciative to say, you know, this actually makes me able to get to my job or get online. So I don't want to discard those voices who, you know, have always just had to pay for that extra childcare in the morning, who have just done it because that's what the times we went to school. And like Will said, it's going to be hard. Change is hard, and we can't please 100% of the people. So we're doing our best to make a decision on what's best for our kids, knowing that, you know, it is challenging for families. And that's why we are giving people months and months of notice that we are able to, you know, hopefully you have in 7 months or 8 months, figure out your plans. And I think the school and Dr. Marston working with each of the elementary schools to try to find that childcare that will go to 4, which will really hopefully help those people who have to bridge those 30 minutes now that they didn't have to bridge before.
Yeah. I was just going to ask Dr. Marston, you have the child care solutions. Some of it is cost, some of it is just accessibility. But is that an ongoing? Like, does there continue to be conversation?
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's, like I said in the presentation, I think math is a little more limited because of staffing and space. And they're looking at, as I said, they expanded earlier this year, and I'm not sure they can expand much more. But Pittsburgh can do that. So we're going to kind of circle back with those folks before Thanksgiving and talk a little bit more about whether they can offer that 4 o'clock option, because it doesn't fit into MAP's tiers, you know, paid tiers of tuition now, you know, so it's them creating another tier, which they told me they did years ago, and there wasn't a lot of, you know, interest in it, so they're going to take a look at that again. And then we're able to, like I said, do something in-house whenever we do that. So we're going to try to tap into those 2 local resources that we have with great partnerships, but if that can't work out for people and they can't provide the services we need, then we'll do it ourselves. Definitely on that.
Yeah, no, and I just, in Kidsborough, there's a, you know, they moved here. So like, I think a partnership, it could be pretty, I'm excited about where it's going. I've heard good things. So like on that one, I recognize the logistics. Part of the reason why I think we wanted to try to vote at this point, right, we do know some of those logistics are getting worked out. That was where I did, you know, some of the emails we heard as well. I think that was a general theme I heard. I agree with some of the others, but I am confident just from what I've seen. Administration, they're going to continue to do everything they can. The kids, so I think, and I'm just more looking at the comments. That was one. One other question, and I'm not sure it might even be the woman who spoke first, but one comment came up was elementary students getting up earlier. At what point is it too early for them? You know, because the high school and middle school students, they're going to stay up late almost no matter what. That's what I've experienced. But is it too early for them? They say at 10:45 is when they're going to go to bed. That was the only one. Anybody?
I think for elementary, that was the purpose that we didn't just swap the time. So we felt like sending elementary school kids to school at 7:40 would be too early. That's why we tried to reduce that as much as possible and not having to start before 8 o'clock.
I also had someone email us with that comment as well, and I reached out to somebody I know, and they were not able to supply any. There doesn't seem to be any significant data out there that signifies pushing an elementary school earlier is detrimental to students. If anything, there seems to be limited studies and limited data that supports it.
I know the committee also looked at having elementary start later, from the 9 o'clock start, and I know that they did some work around 6 hour, 35-minute day. They'd be getting out at 3:35, then doing the bus route at that point. That there'd be, especially the long routes, there would be a group of kids that are getting off the bus this time of year in the dark, right? So that was something that was a concern for the committee. You guys checked out the sunsets for certain months and figured that all out. So that was one of the reasons why we didn't think that was. And quite frankly, when I first got here, we had a 3-tier system. Many people might not know that. They've moved to town the last 10 years. We had 2 elementary schools starting where they do now, actually a little earlier. And then we had Wheelock starting at 9 o'clock. So you had families that were putting kids out on the bus for one school at Memorial, and then going back inside and then doing it, 45 minutes later for other kids, right? And, there wasn't a lot of positive feedback about having a 9 o'clock start for elementary school at that point. So we've done it before here, and it wasn't really well received from a lot of people.
So as my fellow members know, that I did share some of my concerns that I've been hearing from the community, some that were voiced here tonight, and I'll address them kind of one by one. And I don't want to take away anything from the work of the committee, I support the later start time high schools. I do echo everything that Bill said, but I don't want to diminish the changes. And I think that's one thing that we're doing is telling people, rip the Band-Aid off, folks, because that's what we got to do. And as you all know, I did put out that we were having this conversation to make awareness on some of the Facebook threads so that the discussion can be had. And if you haven't noticed, it is the last minute when you actually get the true feedback from people, because that is when people speak up. And if there's any takeaway I've had in the last 6 years of being on this committee, it isn't until the 11th hour, they're not here every meeting like Chris McHugh is, who's following it every second, to be on top of it. Everyone waits to now, and it's about to happen, which is just the nature of our culture and the way we are here. So I'm sorry that you were surprised by that, but I am not. And I also want to echo some of the concerns on the working families, of which I'm one. And both of us work in school districts. And yes, this will be an inconvenience to us, and may actually cause extra costs. Although the numbers of our surveyed people, showed around 10%, that is still 250 some odd students, if we want to go by those percentages, which are way off, so you can't do that. So it could be an impacted cost to it. So, and again, also, I don't want to diminish that as a concern either by our committee. And I think it's rude for us to belittle it as a concern. And again, I don't mean to disrespect my colleagues, but I think that we sit in some comfortable spaces at times and don't understand how those impacts are. I personally have concerns with the elementary school starting before the high schoolers. And again, I do believe that we need the extra sleep, as I try to wake my children up who are in middle school every day, who were the ones that signed that petition as well, by the way, because they don't want to change. But yes, we do know better than them, and they're going to get their vaccines, and they're going to understand that it was better for them. My concern was the extreme swing. I am also a rip the Band-Aid off type of person, but I'm concerned about that extreme swing in time. It does put us on par with the latest start of anybody in the area on the list, with Dover Sherborne. And it will impact sports in the afternoon. No doubt the students will have to leave class early unless we move our flex block to this last period. and even then it still could impact them. So those are all truths in what we're doing. And although I do agree with the science and I agree with it, I guess I'd like to take a pause and remember that it is the single largest change this committee is making outside of the stuff we did during the pandemic, which was out of necessity. So, and I think that is something we should take into consideration, but it's not light. And it's not something that I guess in one of the comments of the staff, there was a major concern of ours as well when we started this, that they were on board with it as well. And I guess I was misunderstood as that out of the 3 times that were suggested by the committee, that the decision on the time was still going to come back to us. And it was not my understanding that it was going to be decided by the union. So that was also another concern of mine. And I'm sorry if I'm bringing up at the 11th hour, but I've only had since the 10th meeting of the 10th to reflect and get the feedback I've been hearing from folks. So as much as I do agree that we do need to move the start times, it's one of the things that when I ended up on the board that was high on my list. Curriculum management, start times were the 2 highest things in my life. And of course, class size. I didn't care what size makes sense. Those are the current concerns that I have, or comments I have about where we are. And it's not to take away from the work, because the work has been good. But I think one of the things that continues to plague us is that we continue to try to get the word out through our social media pieces. The website doesn't count, sorry. Medfield.net is not a highly frequented site except for bus routes and lunch menus. So I think that, we need to continue to pound it. Dr. Marsden does it through the communication system, the parents, and we did get a pretty large turnout in the reflection of the parents. But clearly, like all things, until it's about to happen and the change is about to happen, it's not like we gave the people a vote on which one to choose. We just said the change is coming. So then when they finally hear about what that change is, then they get to actually reflect on the impact. And that window was much shorter. That wasn't a year. All we told them was that we were investigating it because it's going to be a change coming.
We did publish it in June, right? It was announced in June.
The 3 options.
Yes,
right.
in June. So there was some time there.
Yeah, and it's 2,700 emails go out. Almost any of these types of communications. But they, we appreciate that the feedback was today more than before. That's because it's a change. There's some emails. I've read every one of them. Was careful about it. And I think we also have more emails from people who want to be on mobile task force. Right, so 2,700 to 15. That's not the subject. No, but I'm just saying that that same list. I mean, everybody was invited to join. Yeah, we did accept everybody. Like I look at the very first. Like I look at it, from a data perspective, where they start. Adolescents, teenagers need 9.25. They're not getting it. Later start, more sleep, better health. That's one process. It was thorough. I look at it. I'm looking at Robert, the committee again. Staff consider 6 subgroups: staff considerations, family student considerations, scheduling, transportation, extracurricular, and communication. That's where you all started. We had no timeline. If it took that committee 2 years, I was like, great, we're going to get it right. But we asked everybody, we invited everybody. I think everybody who asked
was on it. Yes, anyone who wanted to be on it.
So I was excited that they came to a decision, but I was like right first, rush second. So they like I just look at the website. I'm like, yep, process check, right? Impact. Well, we see the impact. I'm watching how the administration is responding. They're saying, hey, they're managing it, and then the feedback. That's the last piece. I mean, I appreciate the feedback. I wasn't going to wait. I didn't want to wait another year. Whatever you want to do, I wanted it to happen. It's coming. I thought 2 years was going to be good. So, and I guess my last point is around metric success. success. And I said that before, and I guess I'd like to hear it again, is how we're going to know what the change we made is being successful. So, and what we're going to use for that. If there's going to be tardies or absenteeism, you know, I gave it, you know, seems fairly low, but Mr. Parker could probably talk to more of the absenteeism at the high school, Mr. Don at the middle school. So, and those are my comments, I think.
I also feel like we're trying to be intentional with what we were doing here. We wanted to be able to give staff and families as much time as possible to make any necessary adjustments to their schedule. Last week I was at a conference for the school committee, and one of the sessions I sat and talked about the mental health challenges, crisis, whatever word you want to use, and they used the Metro West Health Survey data, which, if you don't know, that's our kids, right? Like, they didn't point out Medfield specifically, but like our kids were in that data, and it's like astronomical and really concerning, the level that mental health challenges have increased. I feel like I personally have also read every email. I reached out to anybody who emailed me and offered them a phone call. The amount of people that emailed us was not a ton, but I did have some great conversations with some people. I personally looked through all of the survey data that came back, all of the notes that the school start time did. I'm very, again, appreciative of the work that everybody did. I think at the end of the day, it's really challenging to not take recommendations from, you know, these Pediatric Association and look at the science and the information there that just shows that this is something that is actually needed for our kids. I will say as well, like, the student feedback was very mixed in the survey, but the individual who sat in Main Street last year publicly said that she might have originally not supported this, but when she was doing her senior project, she finally had an opportunity to get more sleep, and she said publicly she felt a lot better. And everything about it, she was getting, I think she said, like 30 to 40 minutes extra sleep each day consistently with her senior project, because she was now able to do that to then go where she needed to go, and it was positive for her. So again, I don't want to, I don't think it's fair to assume that we're not listening, and we're not trying to do anything incorrect here in that space. Like, we are listening, but I also think that it was very mixed, and I think that that's okay. I will say, just a comment on the petition, because again, I don't want anyone to feel like they filled out a petition, we're not listening. That petition, I'm not going to speak for you guys, it was never shared with the school committee specifically. And I don't know if it's quite right. I'm not personally going to look at Facebook for specific feedback. Like, I try to stay off Facebook personally. So I think that's not necessarily a fair thing to say that we're not listening to when it wasn't actually shared with us. But that's just my
Our student.
Sure, Nate, what are your thoughts?
Any comments?
I think I personally would support it. I know I've heard different things from my fellow students, but especially after hearing like the data that you guys have shared. And when I think about it, like, I would definitely benefit every morning, and I probably would do things. And I support it. And also, my brother is in elementary school. He's always waking up before me anyways. So I just think that
like to adopt the school's part-time, or for the whole thing. Sorry, but if we are ready to vote, I just want to say if there's any new information from anybody on either Zoom or in here, prior to taking a vote, we will open up public comment, but we're looking specifically for new information or that hasn't been shared already.
Greg Wallenius, 24 Gary Drive. Just wanted to push back a little bit that I think the process, so I don't consider myself particularly engaged in town politics, but I came to the open forum with my son. There was like nobody else here besides those of you that were required to be here. You know, I asked the question then, I felt well taken care of. I feel like this has been talked about and announced. I feel the process has been comprehensive and completely transparent. So yeah, I mean, change is hard. You guys have made the case that the science is really clear. I don't think there's debate about that. I just want to commend you on the process, actually. I think it's been totally open, transparent, and thoughtful. And so you are my elected leader. So appreciate you doing your job to make the decision that the community needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meredith Chamberlain, 10 Pleasant. Aaron Watson said something about me that's not actually accurate, so I felt like I should have the floor to be able to correct it. I did reach out to Michelle Kirkby, and we did have a phone conversation like a week and a half ago. So I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you, Mary, but at this point it was their vote. It's not your vote as to what happens with the school start time. So I thought Michelle was the appropriate person. And I also had a conversation with Leo Brum last week, and he suggested to give the students a voice, which is why I started the petition, because when I heard kids' schedules, they couldn't get here. So that was the reason why I did it. I'm sorry, Michelle, I did not share it with you directly. I was trying to figure out a way, and I was talking to kids, and my sons are here, and just there weren't kids that were able to make it. And so that has always been my North Star. That's what I said in my interview when I was elected to school building committee. And so that was the reason why I did it. But I did not contact no one, parent. Thank you.
So I will just say to that, because Meredith did reach out to me, you didn't, the concerns that you raised are based on the process. I did my own due diligence and I'm unfounded. So.
Hi, Renee Halley again. I just want to add, I don't think any of us who are speaking out against this change currently are against what needs to happen. I've read all the research too. An hour is just too much for what our kids need to deal with. If this was a half an hour, you wouldn't be sitting here facing hardly any opposition. But that hour is just too drastic of a change too quickly. We are just asking that we reconsider the process and ensure this is the right decision for our families and our students.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the new school start times that were presented by Dr. Marston for the fiscal year 25-26 school year.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, next up on the agenda, we will do the consent agenda. So for the consent agenda, we have the approval of the regular meeting minutes from 10/10/24. We have some donations, $2,992.54 from Shutterfly Life Touch to be deposited in high school gift account, $1,000 from Thornburg Investment to be deposited in the Wheelock School gift account, $2,155 from the Wheelock PTO to be deposited in the Wheelock School gift account for grade 3 field trip expenses, $850 from the Blake PTO to be deposited in the Blake gift account for the Egyptian program, $750 from the Blake PTO to be deposited in the Blake gift account for the Kindness Club, and $1,000 from the Blake PTO to be deposited in the Blake gift account for the Rosalba Solace grant. Do you have any edits, corrections, or want anything removed before we vote? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Next up, we are going to principal's opening report for the middle and the high school. Dr. Marston?
Daniel, would you like to start? Sure. All right.
Daniel.
Madam Chair, can I just mention that TV is like, it's a little bit of a distraction.
I like shrinking, but I'm just saying.
It's a great show, but I think you could turn the TV. Yeah, just turn the power.
I think I can keep you with shrinking. Here we go.
I just love the show.
The fish were calming earlier too.
The fish were very relaxed. Get that.
Same one, Jeff. You just have to get.
Same one over there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm working hard today.
Thank you. I will try not to be as long as that portion of the committee, but that's a challenge for me, so I'll do my very best. It's fair warning. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the opening of this school year at Blake. I want to thank school committee, central office, custodians, our support staff, and students. We've had really great opening to start the school year. Each year since the pandemic, it has always been, and how's this year going to be? It really feels like a very, and whatever that may be, normal start, very appropriate, and it's been great. A lot of thanks to our community for the support. As always, safe and supportive learning environment is the key. I want to thank, again, school committee, central offices, Tricia, Megan, our nurses, student services who work really hard, and for all the programming that happens during the summer as well. I love the fact that we have summer programming for our students at Blake and across the district as well. So adapting to that, our admin assistants, our custodians led by Matt Fraser, and our maintenance staff did a great job getting our school ready. And we were short staffed, and they did a phenomenal job throughout. Enrollment wise, we have 9 fewer students at Blake this year than we did last year, 578. And we have 6 new students who have come into Blake outside of the district or returned to the district who were residents before. This year we have 12 new Blake staff members. That includes reconfigurations and reassignments in the district. Safety protocols are in place, and facility updates that have taken place over the summer and this school year, roof work, solar panels, new carpeting in our counseling office, and new flooring in a number of classrooms, some HVAC updates. Also updates, thanks Owen, for the installation of some more and updated interior cameras. Gymnasium floor was refinished, and our library and media center got a fresh new coat of paint, new blinds, and new ceiling tiles, and security system has been updated. So that's great. Speaking to, and this was highlighted before since the school start times, our priority, without a doubt, is the well-being of our students. You've heard me say before, I'm very concerned about mental health of our adolescents. And that is the driving force, because without that being in place, no learning can take place. We say to our kids every day, what's our number 1 priority? They'll echo back safety. And the mental health is at the root of that. So that's a lot of what we're putting in place and looking at. Also, I'd be remiss not mentioning that a year ago, Dr. Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, put out his advisory concern about mental health and loneliness of adolescents. And this spring, what he put out over the summer towards the end was his parental advisory on parental stress. And I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind too, and think about our supports and think about the oxygen mask analogy, how we can engage with families in that. Really thinking about, I'm excited about the mobile technology task force. Robert and I know our job alike is exploding all summer. What are you doing with phones? What are you doing with phone? The next generation, Jonathan Haidt. That is a huge topic, and I'm very pleased with the approach we've been doing. We're trying to make sure that we're not tone deaf, like making decisions and it's still working. So that's a pulse that we're looking at about the procedures we're putting in place to make sure that students are off their phones. And that, AirPods, smartwatches are a challenge. We know that that's a conversation that started earlier too. So we're navigating that. And a big emphasis we want to talk about is parent education too, what that looks like. Student support team is something that we are really proud about. Some evolution we've done for our student support team processes and procedures. Jean Duffy is one of our reading specialists, is our new team chair. He's done a phenomenal job really putting a lot of processes into place to support all students. We're looking at our building curriculum accommodation plan to make sure it's updated. And that's an annual conversation, and in conjunction with a lot of the work that Mary and Christine led for the district with our MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Thrilled that Michael Gao, one of our 6th grade social studies teachers, will be the point person for our MTSS team. So we're looking at data to really inform how we can support all kids. Our theme this year is connections, and that really ties in a lot to what we're talking about in the lines of the strategic plan. The number 1 thing is belonging. Really thinking about that's a struggle for adolescents. I still have yet to meet anyone that says I'd love to relive my middle school years. And a big piece that it's a real challenge. Really think about how we can put those systems in place, and belonging is the foundation. So that's a priority. In terms of meeting students where they're at and bringing them forward, our advisory program is great and it's strong. We always have the good problem of what do we want to do with that. You've probably heard me say before, I can make an argument every day for recess. I can make an argument every day for sustained silent reading. I can make an argument every day for what I need. It's a good problem that we have, and what are we going to do with it to really meet the needs? Tying into, and it's not because of the school start times, that is really looking, and Jeff knows that we talked a lot about our master schedule. I think it's time to really look at, are we meeting the needs of kids with our current schedule? It's a huge endeavor to look at, but that's something that we're really thoughtfully looking at to try to make sure that the length of period of time we have within the school days meeting kids, that we're providing supports and interventions within the school day as well. So that's something that's really important. Always analyzing our current MCAS results, and Christine's going to be talking about that as well. And our Metro Adolescent Health Survey is really guiding a lot of that work as well. Upcoming, just kind of preview, we have the annual Samaritans presentation on mental health and suicidality prevention for our 7th graders. Information we send to families that happens in December every year. We've made a conscious decision to do it at the same time every year to analyze data. That December is a different time. We started giving it in March, hard to analyze trends. So that's for our 7th grade students and families. Also about programming that we're thrilled about. Our Unified program expanded this year with Bocce this fall, which has just been wonderful and really thrilled about it. Thrilled to hear too that other communities are building on their Unified program in middle school for basketball, so we'll have some more teams to play, which is great. So I'm really proud about that. And for me, that's the essence of what we should be doing in all aspects for all of our community. I shared with Michelle, it's a good reminder that a lot of what we do is geared towards the majority, and we need to think about the kids on the margin and the families on the margin. So that may not be the right terminology, but for Bocce, when West Bridgewater community their school came up, and grandparents drove over an hour and a half. And I'll tear up about this to see their child. And one of the grandparents said, "This is the first time I've seen my grandson play for something with their community." So huge endeavor. And those are the things I think that really make the big difference on kids. The other 2 things I just want to highlight is our work with culturally responsive practices and with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I know later this year, Brenda and I will probably come with some of the members of our committee, district-wide committee, and really very much appreciate the support and investment in that work as a committee, that we have members from each building. And 2 pieces that we're really starting to look at and some has been mentioned tonight, is the cost of the Medfield experience and the cost on families, looking at across the board. What is that from incidental costs, which, if you will, to larger costs? And one, middle school is an expensive experience. We have our Hale field trip in 6th grade. 8th grade trip is an expensive experience. Those are grade level experiences that we have an obligation to make sure it's accessible to all. And that's something that we're constantly working on. Thrilled that our Blake PTO has really been making a concerted effort to reach out to other ways to help raise support in that way. That's something we have to keep in mind. It's a tension point. A lot of great programming, but we have to make sure it's accessible for all. In conjunction with how are we, and this ties to some of the work we did as a leadership team with communication in the district, looking at family engagement. We do a lot of communication, but is it all concerted? And is it reaching all? Tying to like our family conferences that we did this fall, we're really trying to take a look at which families did not sign up for any conferences. And are there some themes? And there are. And looking at that, is our communication outreach working for them? And how can we tap into that? So really important for us. Just the other things I want to highlight is just some of the things that are going on academically and socially. Big concerted effort is continuing the efforts of aligning our curriculum and our systems of feedback, reporting, and assessment with the high school and also with Dale Street. And we're looking at that continuum for kids, which is really important, and looking at calibration of practices. And are they consistent? That we want to make sure, not cookie cutter, but that they're consistent experiences that feed the programming for the curricula and they're relevant. Artificial intelligence blows our mind every minute. What does that mean? So that's another endeavor that I know district-wide we've got to look at and wrestle with. It's awesome, but it's like, so what does this mean? And it really puts a pause and question about some of our means of what we're doing. Should we be doing it? Should we be not? It's not clear. Just also want to just Susan Bykoff and I had the pleasure of presenting last week in Nashville at the American Middle Level Education Conference, which was awesome. It's always good to get outside and get a global perspective. It was very affirming in a lot of ways, and we have some room for growth to do as well. And two other things I just want to mention. Veterans Day recognition was wonderful. We had veterans. Jeff came by again, which is great. It's so wonderful to have that connection. Quick funny story. One of our veterans, Tom Sweeney, came, and I was gone in Nashville. He came the next day, wanted to thank his two students that had visited. But he said, I don't really know what middle schoolers like. He brought 2 black coffees and bagels and cream cheese. We're like, not sure the 6th graders are going to have a black coffee, but it was just wonderful. That was great. Theater productions are this weekend, so come watch. Hour of Codes coming up, and school spirit and culture is important. I'd be remiss not thanking Jillian Shaw, student council. She does such a great job in looking at that. And also I want to shout out to Diane Horvath, who's been running our Hello Blakers Instagram account. And that's some feedback we got from families, that Instagram has been a really nice way of reaching out and with kids too, to highlight a lot of work. So that's been fun and brings a lot of fun in the school. I also want to thank Joe Robertson, who is a member of our site council and has been a good sport to be here through all this. Just as part of that, I know, Tim, you had mentioned, and I think that was one of the ideas that came to the committee before, the importance of site council reps to talk. So, Joe, you will.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I'll echo Nat's appreciation. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Joe Robertson, 21 Kenny Road. I have 3 girls in the system, 4th, 6th, and 9th. So I first joined the site council for Blake when my 9th grader was coming through middle school, and I'm now there as my 6th grader starts the journey there. As you know, site council is a great opportunity for parents to meet with staff and administration and talk through and really get in the weeds on a lot of these subjects that coming up. And Nat and his team and his staff do a really great job of presenting what's going on a regular basis, and then really encapsulating the key things that he's dealing with and that his staff is dealing with in school. And then it's an opportunity for us as parents to provide some feedback and to share what we're hearing at home and what we're hearing, from our neighbors. And it's all of the items that that you all know well, grading and measurement and DEIB, and we talk about budget issues, and obviously, as it's been discussed today, the idea of belonging and mental health is a major factor, and then the alignment of practices that Matt mentioned. It's great to talk with not only faculty, teachers at Blake, but we'll have high school. The chair of the department will come and talk about how what's being taught at Dale is aligning with what the kids are learning in Blake, and then how that's going to build up to what they're going to work on here. So it's a great way for we as parents to learn a little bit more detail about all of these issues. And then it's a really valuable resource or opportunity for us to provide some feedback and bend the ear of the people that are taking care of our kids, every day. I would put in a plug to site council and encourage parents to join us and to reach out to that, to be part of the conversation. Thanks.
So I don't know if there are any questions about anything going on. Anything I shared.
I was curious about the families on the feedback that you didn't get a lot of. Could you just recap a little bit about the involvement with the parent conferences? Did you say you've got a lower number than usual?
No, I'm sorry, not lower. It's just who didn't sign up, and were there some trends? And this is a broad stroke generalization.
Yeah.
I would say some of our families who have English learners percentage. If we had run reports before of our more, again, marginalized communities, families of those students may not have signed up. There were also other, families that didn't too. And it's hard to kind of know why, but it's one of those things that we do send out information. Is it being received? Is it read? How are we doing that? How are we proactively reaching out? So it's something that, it's hard to really quantify as to the why. In some families, you could look, well, maybe they've already had meetings. How do you know? But it's something that we don't want to just turn a blind eye to or kind of have deaf ears on, say, because really our sessions were full. 6th grade across the board, maxed out, a little less 7, a little less than 8. The 2 subject matters have the most by far, math and English. That's not a surprise. But it's nice that, some families signed up for 7 once it got opened up, saying, I just want the opportunity to hear how my kid's doing in all the classes if I can. That's something that we're really like. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate the emphasis on the social emotional learning link. I think it's so important. And I do appreciate sort of the proactiveness, right? It's not waiting until someone's saying, like, why isn't these maybe people on the fringe or however, the marginalized groups, and making sure we're proactive and looking at that data. So we're reaching out first, just like, focusing on the 80%. Because sometimes those are the students or families that just need a little extra support. So I think it's great that you're thinking about it. So thank you.
And that's something too, like with the MTSS is a big thing, looking at that. What are some trends we're seeing that we may not be looking at holistically?
My only comment too, I appreciate Joe joining Insight Council. We really did it. I think it was when you and I were standing on the last election. Some were saying, hey, it's a little more like a checkbox. And I said, that's not the intention. We do try to go out to PTO meetings and things like that and listen and voice. Insight Council has you guys are part of that school improvement plan. So by bringing you guys up together, I'd love to hear how that collaboration is. And we do, we like hearing from parents, but we also want our site councils to be like, bring that voice forward. So we've been easing into this for the last couple of years, but I think it's great the way you guys teamed up. And
yeah, I think the music to my ears when you would talk about curriculum continuity, and I think that was a big deal because that's like something that Dr. Marsden has spearheaded with bringing on the appropriate people to do that. I think that to actually hear that come back, I think it's just amazing. So, and I did that, and the parents are interested in it. But that
things are being implemented.
Well, and that parents are interested and engaged. So I think that's a big part of that. To support that learning at home. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
And I do 2 minutes less than school start.
Not bad. It's good for you, man. I also appreciate what Jeff called me Nathaniel. I know my parents are still here. It's all good. There you go.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there. So I'm happy to present our opening, and joining me is Catherine Callahan. Catherine is a senior here at Medfield High School. She's also in year 2, being on our site. Catherine can share some thoughts in a little bit. But wanted to sort of go back to the beginning of the year. It is hard to believe that we are already, I think last week we started Q2. So we're moving along. It's been really busy. We opened up the building with 701 students, which I think is about what we were a year ago. So I want to talk about a few activities we've done. Some are very traditional, but they're very important to many of our students. The start of the school year was great, and as always, we started with the senior cruise. We do this cruise for lots of reasons. Mainly, the event fosters camaraderie within students, creates lasting memories with our seniors. They will often comment to us. That's one of the highlights of the year. It's a great beginning of the year event that forges a deeper bond, shared laughter, creates experience that many students really enjoy. And, fostering that community is really important. And we do the senior cruise on the second day of school. So they're coming right back and we get them out. It's awesome. Dr. Marsden's with us. We have a whole host of teachers that chaperone it. It's a great event. Speaking of our seniors, they've had a really busy fall. Many helped plan our Spirit Week and Pep Rally, which took place in October. And I know some of them, probably Maeve and certainly Catherine, are breathing a sigh of relief that on the other side of November 1st, which is when many of the college applications are due. So we can't ever forget what that is to our students, the support they need during that time. Actually, we did something a little different this year. We surprised them, I think it was a surprise, with the donuts and bagels and hot chocolate out in the field. Families, their senior parents provided that for us. So it was nice just to kind of acknowledge what the fall has been like for many of our seniors, just to kind of dial down a little bit. So it's been a good start to the year. I want to talk about a few items in our school improvement plan. One of the things that we're looking at doing this year is to create an opportunity for students to showcase their work. So there's plenty of research available on the effects of public presentations and how it can positively impact student motivation and achievement. We know that when students can demonstrate their work, and we know that they love to demonstrate their work, it can increase accountability and provide a greater sense of purpose for them. So we've got a few projects already embedded into what we do. Our 11th graders do a civics project every year. Our seniors do the senior project. We're looking at those projects as an opportunity for our students to really share with the community the work they're doing. Some of you might have been on the receiving end of questions regarding some of the civics projects that will come out in the spring. The students right now share them with their classrooms, but I'd love to sort of open up a little bit more and have people in the community, parents, do that to see what work they're doing. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. We're continuing to work to improve the 8th and 9th grade transition. So this year we reorganized our 9th grade orientation, really with the hope of doing what we can to support this move into the high school. This year we're trying something a little bit different with our freshmen. We provided them all with agendas, sort of old school agenda books, and we surveyed them, got some feedback. It was mixed. The teachers seem to think for many students it's working great. Some of the feedback I got from parents at open house was pretty positive, and then some of the survey data from the students was, sort of mixed. So we're going to survey them again when we get on the other side of the first semester to see how they're using them, but it's all in an effort to try to do what we can to help our students stay organized. Our teachers, our 9th grade teachers, continue to meet regularly to discuss what they're doing to support our students during the transition. We started doing that a few years ago. That's been very helpful. Another item that we're looking at is we're working with our department heads on our program of studies to make sure that we are offering courses that reach all of our students, and specifically electives. These types of courses enhance our critical thinking for students, problem solving skills, and they often tap into their interests. So we find that, reviewing the courses that we offer are very important. We get feedback from students, and this is sort of where Catherine comes in. So just to give you an example of some of the new courses we've added, in the last 3 or 4 years, classes like ceramic sculpture, current issues in science, introduction to veterinary science. We're really trying to bring in classes that students are interested in, that are more hands-on, project-based, to give them just a different experience. Catherine, I think, represents a lot of students here. She's involved in clubs, activities, student government, she plays sports, and in talking with her in site council, and we met a couple of weeks ago looking at sort of the classes she's taken here. She's taken a range of electives here, and she's very articulate in how important they are and how much she enjoys them and why she takes them. So she's going to share a little bit sort of her perspective as a student, the importance of some of the electives.
Hi everyone, as Mr. Parker said, my name is Catherine and I'm a senior here at the high school. So through my 4 years here, I've had the opportunity to explore different electives offered. So I'm just going to talk about my experiences with some of those classes. The first one I wanted to talk about was advertising marketing. So I took that my sophomore year, and then I'm taking entrepreneurship currently. And the reason I took these courses was to maybe perhaps spark like a career interest. And I did find that maybe a career into advertising or business would be of interest to me after I took advertising and marketing. And what I really loved about these classes were that they were project-based, and there was a lot of opportunities to collaborate with my peers and a lot of opportunities to be creative and artistic. And I think the project-based structure of the class is something I don't get often in some of my other core classes. And also they offer opportunities to like connect and apply what we were learning to real life situations. For example, analyzing Super Bowl ads and learning about famous entrepreneurs and startups. So I think what I really loved was the project base and the opportunity to collaborate. And they were sparking career interest while also like allowing for a more relaxed and fun class that kind of allowed me to take a break from my more rigorous schedule in my core classes. There obviously isn't homework in these classes, but it was meaningful for my career interests. And another class I took was speech, which I took to help with my public speaking, which I wasn't very good at, but it allowed me to help learn how to like write speeches, as well as grow confidence in my ability to public speak and speak to crowds. So I thought that class helped a lot. And it's definitely a class I would encourage a lot of students to take, as I acquired lifelong skills. And then I also took honors writing seminar, which was another class that I was able to improve my writing skills in. And I also wrote my college essay in this class. I took it junior year in the second semester, and that obviously took a lot of stress off this summer and this fall because I had already finished my college essay. And then some other classes were Roots of Terrorism that I took, and then Intro to Creative Writing. These were quarter classes. I also liked the quarter class style because I could take more classes I was interested in, but it wasn't filling up a full like semester spot. I was skeptical to take Roots of Terrorism at first, but I found that it was one of my favorite classes. We watched a lot of documentaries, did a lot of projects. I was able to collaborate with my peers. And it was interesting, but it also allowed me to take a break from like a rigorous schedule with a lot of classes that have a lot of homework and are more like notes based. Whereas in these classes, I was doing projects and collaborating with peers. So those are just some of the overview of the classes I've taken. I think if I were to suggest more electives, or I was choosing electives, I think the best types are ones that kind of integrate like classes that are career-based, but also have that project-based and collaboration structure, because it gives students a break from their day and their busy schedules, but it also allows them to kind of explore different careers they might be interested in. For example, I have a friend who's interested in architecture, and she always says that she would have loved to take a class maybe that explored architecture, because it would look good on her transcript when she's applying to college or applying to an architecture major, but it would also provide her with a class that's more creative and allows her to do projects and take a break from her busy schedule. But I do think our courses now, there's a lot to choose from, and I think a lot of students can find electives that they're interested in, and electives that like I said, allow them to take a break from their busy day. They don't have homework, but they're also learning and maybe sparking career interests, and they're collaborating with their peers, doing projects. And it's just different from the normal structure of our core classes that are a lot of notes, a lot of homework. But I do think overall that the course selection now offers, like, every student can find something they're interested in.
I mean, and I think that's, you hit on a couple of things. Our students work hard, and, there are some required work classes that they have to take, but I think we really focus on the electives that we have. If you look at our program studies, compared to a lot of other high schools, ours is very robust. It's not easy to schedule it, and sometimes our numbers don't come out right, but we work really hard to make sure that it's a fluid document. We're constantly moving some electives in that our new courses that, we get feedback from students, we're moving them out that don't become popular, or that aren't as popular. So it's just something that I think is really important to the high school experience. We talk about core classes that we offer, the extracurriculars that we offer, and I think these elective experiences are important as well for our students. So just a few other things before we wrap up. I do want to thank you for supporting our out-of-school learning experiences that we're going to have for our students next April. We have a group of students going to Costa Rica during April break, another group going to France, and another group going to Prague and Italy. So thank you so much for supporting that. Our fall musical is in its final stages. The Little Shop of Horrors is beginning It's going to take place November 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's next weekend. So they're really busy in the auditorium if you go by there. And finally, very excited to share with you that our boys and girls soccer teams are now in the state Final Four, which will take place next Tuesday. Congratulations. Our boys and girls cross country team is going to run in the state finals this year, which is awesome. That's this weekend. And our girls volleyball team again made it to the state championship for the second year in a row. So they play Saturday night against Weston, who played last year up in Full Record. So it's always busy here. That's the exciting part of it. Dr. Marsden and I, we talk a lot and go home tired sometimes, but going to these events to see our students, whether it's on the stage or on the field, it's just so rewarding. Whether we win or lose, just the participation that exists that we're able to create with, so many different programs is great for them. Our main goal is our students leave here after 4 years with a great experience in and out of the classroom. That's just something that we're always looking for. So happy to answer any questions that you might have for myself or Catherine.
Just one, nice job, especially public speaking. Hopefully you got a good grade. How's the mobile phones? I know we changed policy a little bit. How's that?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, there's definitely a big difference. Teachers have reported a big difference. I'd love to get maybe Catherine's feedback on that as well. Like anything, we need reminders, and we have to make sure that we're staying on top of it. We are going to survey students. Well, my sense is I have an idea where they're going to land on it, but in general, the teachers are telling us that certainly in class they've noticed a difference, and the kids have been pretty responsive. There wasn't as much pushback as we were kind of expecting, because I'm sure a lot of students probably weren't thrilled about it, but in general, it's gone pretty well. I don't know, maybe Catherine, going back right up here again, maybe your thoughts on your experiences.
I think at first I was a little skeptical. I thought it was gonna really affect me, but it didn't affect me really at all. I found, I can check my phone during EPT or lunch, but there's nothing really I need on my phone. And I think it's I would support it. It really hasn't affected me much. I'm able to focus in class, and there's no distractions. Other students aren't distracted by their phones, and also for teachers, I'm sure it's a lot better, because it's disrespectful when students are going on their phones while they're trying to teach. But I think at first I was a little skeptical, but definitely I would support it. It hasn't affected me. There's nothing really going on my phone that I need to check during the day. So. Yeah.
To add to that, all my teachers have us put it in our assigned number for class, and that's how they take notes for us. Yeah. So for one class, I'm number 4, and who's on there, then she can see their accent. So it actually really helps, especially I remember last year it wasn't as enforced, and kids were still getting distracted, having to do their math, but this year I really have set seeing every kid's interactions. For the most part, everyone's more focused.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Charlotte.
Okay. Next up, we have the MCAS presentation, Dr. Marsden.
Yes, Dr. Carr is here to do a presentation. Christine and I had the parent advisory yesterday, superintendent's parent advisory. Christine did a presentation similar to what she showed you yesterday. Got some really good feedback from parents, so she's ready to let it roll again tonight.
Let it roll. Hi, everyone. We're just going to get it started on the screen.
Oh, yeah,
So just be a minute.
Some things are actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be here to speak about MCAS results and also to showcase the fantastic work by our faculty, staff, and students. So today's presentation will focus on 3 particular areas, including a review of MCAS scores from grades 3 to 10, focusing on how do we stack up and how we compare to others statewide, and then using data to inform instruction and learning. Just move some of that out of the way so not distracting. One second. Okay, we're good. So for the next series of slides, I'm going to be sharing our performance, and all the slides look a little bit like this. Keep in mind for the unit of measure we're really looking at is MCAS scores that are focusing on this. They're really looking at meeting and exceeding. It'll show everyone over the last 3 years, so 2022, 23, 24. And then in red, you'll see the state. But I really love for everyone to focus on the bottom pieces, which is what percentage of students in that grade level are meeting or exceeding units, meeting or exceeding expectations. It's a really good way to just focus, and that will really set the stage for this. So we have a number of grades, and I just want to really walk through in terms of looking at the comparison across grades. And you'll see in ELA, we have 63% of grade 3 students who are meeting or exceeding expectations. And we have in math, 59% of Wheelock students who are meeting in grade 3, meeting or exceeding expectations in math. Now keep in mind that in a typical year after year after year, our percentage of meeting or exceeding is typically between the 60 and 80% range or so. And you'll notice that one is below that. And that please put a pin in that. I'm going to explain a little bit about the math in a moment, but I just wanted to set the stage in terms of this is the first year of a full curricula in illustrative math. And so as a result, we're in the midst of a transition. And so this is showing that in terms of all our elementary math classrooms from grades K through grade 5 have implemented illustrative math. And you'll see that show up, and this is showing up here in grade 3. Now, again, I asked you to put a pin in this because I'm going to show you a little bit in terms of how we address that. But I just wanted to call that attention to that math performance in grade 3. Grade 4, you'll see, again, the meeting and exceeding expectations and the comparison across the different levels. You have 65% in grade 4 in ELA and 83% in math in grade 4. It's really annoying. I apologize on that. Yep, it's hopping around there. Okay, grade 5. Again, with ELA, 64% of grade 5 meeting or exceeding, and 78% in math meeting and exceeding. Considering that this is the first year of a program, grade 4 and grade 5, pretty tremendous work on that. Science is always a strength here in Medfield, and you'll see that with our scores in grade 5, we have the 70% meeting or exceeding expectations. Hopping over to middle school, you'll see the performance, and grade 6 ELA, you have the 68% meeting or exceeding, and you'll also see the 64% in math. I'm going to just move this so you'll be able to see the final score compared to the state. Notice that I haven't really mentioned state averages, and the reason why is that, and we always look at the state average, is always something important for us to look at, but when we actually look at comparisons, we look beyond that, and again, future slides I'll explain how we use this data. Here's grade 7, and again, performance is within that range of that 60 to 80% range. And you'll see the performance with 70% of ELA students meeting or exceeding expectations, and 66% of our math students meeting or exceeding expectations. I just lost that screen, not sure why. Okay, there we go. Okay, and here's our grade 8 performance. And again, similar in terms of performance, 69% of Blake students in grade 8 meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA, and 66% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations in math. Science performance, again, similar to the grade 5 performance. You have 70% of grade 8 science students meeting or exceeding expectations. And here's our, to wrap up our grade 10, ELA and math. You have strong performances here. You'll see in ELA, you have 77% of our students last year who performed meeting and exceeding expectations. And you had 80% of our math students similarly performing meeting or exceeding expectations. You'll see the comparisons to the prior years. So that's just one way we look at the data, but really drill down and look at our comparisons to 2 levels, our peer group and overall. And we also look at the rankings itself. So in looking at this chart, what this chart explains is the elementary meeting or exceeding ranking compared with all students. You'll see grade 3, 4, 5 on the left-hand side. You'll see the ELA, math, and for science. And then you'll see the statewide ranking on the column to the 3rd column there, and then the number of districts statewide. I've colored them in terms of different color codes to really illustrate in terms of how we rank compared to the 309 or 300 plus districts across the state. And keep in mind that this isn't the percentile, this is actually the number. So in anything in the top 25, it really represents within the top 15% statewide. So you'll see of all these different, there's 17 different options. We're about in the top 25 in about half. So just recommend, it just shows the performance of our students overall. And you'll see strong performances happening in grade 4, as well as in grade 5 in math. You'll see in grades 6 and 7 and 8 in ELA, as well as science in grade 8. And here you see that performance in the high school with strong performances in math, and number 2 in the state in science. Really, this has been, again, last year they were number 3, this year they're number 2. And you can see the number of districts statewide, so it's against the whole number, the 300 plus districts that are in the state. So that was the data itself. I really like to spend a lot of time focusing on what we do with the data, because that's where the real magic happens in terms of unpacking these scores and really operationalizing them and making them meaningful. So what I'm about to explain is sort of 3 different ways that we use the data and how these scores translate into impacting instruction and curriculum across the district. And so it really started a number of years, but it's really something we've been focusing on is building a data culture. And that data culture is something that's just been foundational. There's always been a data culture here in Medfield, but it's really been intentional since I've been here in front and worked on this. So starting back in 21, 22, in the depths of the pandemic, sorry to bring that up, everyone, but we really started with intentional professional development, focusing on building data literacy amongst our faculty, and also capturing all those forms of data that are across the district and really making sense of what the data we collect. And teachers have always and continue to capture tremendous amounts of data, but to have it all in one place and really making sense of that, that's something that wasn't there before. So teachers have spent time back in several years ago, identifying all the different forms of data they use, how they use it, and how it impacts their instruction. And that was something that we captured. And we also identified how it was shared. Sometimes data is collected by individual teachers, sometimes by grade level, sometimes by department, or sometimes by a school. And it was really important for us to identify that. So we spent a lot of time in the beginning really creating that data culture and that foundation of literacy. From there, it was all about visualization, or I would call it making data consumable. I use this term and I highlighted it because that's something that I always, I just say this to a lot of people. It's not enough to have the data. It's more about making it useful and making it useful to our teachers, making it useful to our administrators, and making it just something that could be actualized and implemented from. DESE, for instance, produces tremendous amounts of data, but up until recently, it was really in these long forms. It was really difficult to get, and it takes a lot of time to unpack. And so it's something that was something like, how can we take this great sense of data, whether it's from DESE or it's from internal sources, and make it something that is easy to consume, and especially something that's very usable in the time periods and the opportunities, whether it's a CPT meeting, whether it's a department meeting, whether it's a faculty meeting. And so what's been one of the major game changers was that we have a role within in our district by a person who was a tech integrationist, phenomenal person, but had this passion, loved to work with data. And that was something that's really tapping into his expertise. And we realized that he would be the fantastic, really perfect person to help visualize this data. So over the last few years, we've been really working directly with him. His job was reclassified to a role of analyst. And he's the one that really takes this data and makes it real, makes it pop, makes it readable and consumable, and therefore has really enabled us to take the data and really use it on a day-to-day basis. And I'll explain how we do that in a moment. But that's been a significant shift and a really positive one. So a couple of the different initiatives that we do, one of which is the monthly leadership team data discussions. These started last year and they still continue this year. And these are monthly data dives that are led by myself and Neil. And what we do is that we take time, and we're really fortunate to have time out of our monthly leadership meetings to take a set of data and pack it, analyze it, and then provide tools that the administrators can use with their faculty. So last year's goal was really collaborating with the leadership team on really identifying the available data, listening to them, and to highlight tools that will answer the questions that they want answered. This year, we went to the next step further. We identified and we worked with the building principals and other district leaders and said, tell us about the time that you're working with your faculty. When does it occur? How long is that period of time? Who's present? So we realized that people are sometimes want to use data on quick hits, 15 minutes or so as part of a faculty meeting. Others will use it in a department meeting. Other people want to use data as a part of a half-day PD. And it was great to hear it and listen to them, because we started building tools and also building lesson plans, ways that they can share the data in these different time periods. So they knew they had the data and they can actualize that. So that was really huge, to listen to the administrators and meet their needs in terms of how they can be data leaders within their building. So these are some examples of what we're doing this year. And this is just the fall, but just gives you an example. So back in September, the 2024 MCAS results came out, and right away we dove right in. And we just wanted to really unpack what was there. And we used the Open Architects tool, which I'll highlight here. And it's been a really tremendous tool for us to really visualize and really help the administrators make meaning of what they're seeing. So we use the protocol, Notice and Wonder. Teachers will know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of how to take these data sets that may not have any meaning at first, and then allow the teachers themselves who might be participating in a department meeting or a faculty meeting to really notice the different phenomena that's going on, and then make wonders about maybe theorize what's happening. And then it really sets the stage for really acting on that. October, we focused on student growth percentile data. And this is the impact of individual teachers of student performance. We were able to take the data that was provided by the state and really identify impacts of individual teachers as well as sets of teachers on student performance. And we shared those data with the faculty, with the administrators on ways to help them spark conversations with their teams on how to support best practices, those teachers who are just knocking out of the park and have great student growth percentiles, and how that can be shared, those practices can be shared with other teachers. In November, it was MCAS Part 2, where we dove into student subgroups and started doing standards analysis. Really, at this point, we had the data, and it's not only the Open Architects tool, which is a DESE provided tool, but we actually were able to use those data and put it through our own and create our own specific tools. And that's when we really looked at things such as diving into item analysis, which I'll show you an example on and how we use that, and also looking at historical data over time. And so we used a protocol like 3-2-1, meaning 3 things you notice, 2 things you want to focus on, and 1 question that you linger. And that really is a way that when we do these these experiences within a faculty, within the leadership team, we model that. So we have 15 plus people there. We enact how that we unpack these data. And then it's something that the building principals can take and do with their faculty. And this is something that's being done. So the data is alive, data is being discussed, and it's being discussed across different contexts and different departments as well as different buildings. And coming up in November will be local data. And we'll talk about that is our student climate data, and we'll be focusing on that. A second way we focus on data is department head and coordinating meetings. So this is the time frame in terms of how this happens, but it's really taking the data that again is released and making sure that it's getting into the hands of the people who make this meeting and the most actions from that. So in September and October, MCAS, SAT, and AP data is distributed to leadership, including department chairs and coordinators. And then one-on-one meetings are set up between the data analyst, which is Neil, and the department chairs or leadership for them to really walk through the data, answer any specific questions, identify trends, and then also listen to them, because sometimes they want data presented in a different way. And that's why Neil is brilliant, because what he does is he listens to them, he asks them specifically how they would like the data, and then he creates bespoke tools to really make their jobs easier. Ways to highlight data that really help facilitate meaningful conversations. So that happens in September and October. And then in November, December, you have our data unpacking meetings. And what occurs there is now that the department chairs and the coordinators have had access to the different data sets, then we meet with them and I'm there, the building principals are there, and as well as the department chair or coordinator, and they walk through the data. Now that they've made meaning, now that they create specific tools, and they talk specifically about what they're seeing, areas of just great achievement, areas of growth. And then we talk as a team on what we can do as administrators, as department chairs, as coordinators to make a difference in terms of what do we need, what adjustments, what curricula, what supports do they need in order to really impact students based on the data. And then in November through June, it's all about those action steps and making that happen. The third part is these dashboards. And I talked a little bit about it. I'm about to show you some of them that we use, but it's creating these data dashboards that happen all throughout. It's been great, the relationships that Neil has been able to forge with the different department chairs and coordinators, as well as building principals. He's always on call. He always shows up and he's like, tell me how you want the data and how you want it visualized. And so he'll do the tweaks and he'll really present data in a way that will be very consumable, as I said, to the faculty. So it's very useful for their day-to-day work. So I wanted to show you some of these tools. This is the first one. This one is by Open Architects. It has been a game changer. It's something that is offered by DESE for free. Really fortunate to have it. We had access starting last year. We're still continuing this year. This year they tweaked it. They're very responsive to districts' needs. And so things look slightly different from last year in a really positive way. And so this gives you an idea of some of the areas that we can dive deeply in. I cannot show you all the tools because many of these have student names, so we can actually identify from the student level. But you can see in terms of here, just some of the tabs across the top, including I can look at things overall, which is this one. And then we can also do individual schools, student level, specific student groups, for instance. And then we can do item analysis, which I can show you. But this one here is just an example. This area in the top right quadrant is our dark districts, or these are districts that we really truly look at. These are districts that are identified as most similar to us in terms of demographics. So we're always looking at performance compared to others. And then you'll see on the bottom.
The state establishes those forms. And
I'm sorry?
And the state establishes those forms.
Yes, exactly. You're right. These are not, they're not ours. So we are considered very similar in terms of Cohasset, Dover, Duxbury, and Holliston, just to give you an idea. The bottom right is you'll see comparisons against our selected districts. And then you'll see comparison to all districts here. And so that gives you that comparison between the both. This, for example, is 4th grade math. And so you'll see this in a scatter plot in terms of how we perform, looking at scale score versus student growth percentile. I'm gonna move this guy and keeps on hopping around. Okay. Here's another scatter plot, and just to give you a little different information, this is looking at things in terms of statewide. So you see this upper right quadrant, you'll see the first school after ours in the state is the Abby Kelly School. If you know anything but no school announcements, it's always number one, it's always the first one. And they always call out, sorry, is that you'll see the comparison against different states, against all the districts of the state. And you can see in terms of performance overall. In this case, it's 10th grade math. So this is our item analysis. Love this tool because this is the tool that allows us to look at standard by standard in terms of our students and their individual performance, and then how our students did. So remember I asked you to hold on to that 3rd grade math. Right? And 3rd grade math was not in that 60 to 80%, so it was 59. And then identify that there's definitely, we look at everything, keep in mind, even if it's within the 60 to 80, but I'm highlighting that because that did not make that. And we're like, oh. So we looked through the data and I worked with Jen Belsky, our math coordinator. I said, let's go look at the item analysis and see what happened because the performance isn't where it should be. And she's like, right away, she saw it. And I don't know if you can see it too, the area right there, fractions. And she's like, exactly. It is the focus on fractions is just one example, is because of the curriculum change. What happened was that curriculum that was traditionally taught in our previous curricula was now changed to the 2nd grade level and with illustrative math. So therefore our 3rd grade students did not receive that information. So there was a gap, clearly there was a gap. And so she showed us with the maps. And so I looked at it, she looked at it, and then she said, look, they catch it again from 4th grade. We'll get them up to speed, it's not a problem. And this will not be a problem again. This is a 1-year hiccup because of the curriculum change. But that shows the level of detail and type of conversations that we can have on item after item because it was item analysis. So besides Open Architects, there are a number of different tools that we have created, and they allow us a bunch of different things. You'll notice the first 4 are on MCAS. We have a number of them on MCAS, including the teacher toolkit, which I'll show you a couple of examples of that. That is item analysis, standard analysis, the frequency, and that's the question type. We have historical data over time, so we can see trends in terms of specific topics or specific standards over time. We have our subgroup data in terms of how our individual subgroups perform. 5-year trends. And then on top of that, we just have other things as well that we use in terms of those data discussions. As I mentioned, not only our MCAS data, something that's we discuss, we also discuss AP performance, the Apple performances for our world language students. So these are the other standardized tests that reflect data that we make sure that is visualized and consumable in a way that can really foster these conversations. So this is an example of one of our homegrown sites, but I wanted to show you a little bit about this one. So you'll see the item here. You'll see that we have the year, we have the ELA, and then along you'll see the item number. And if you see an underline, if you click on that, this is actually a screenshot, but on the live version, it would actually show the question itself to provide a real example of that. You have the item response in terms of type of question, the item description, the possible points, and then our score versus the state and the state differential. This last column is very key because we as a guide, we always don't look at the state in terms of, we don't need to be on par on that. The expectation is that we do at least 10 points above the state on each. So that's one way that we look to see areas that we need to focus on, whether it's curricular or instruction. But that's just one of these tools. I'm going to show you one more. Here's another homegrown tool that we had. This is for grade 5 ELA. And again, you'll see the standard and the standard description, but you'll see the item that's number of times on the MCAS. We actually have it drilled down to the point we know how frequent particular types of questions are asked. And we look at the comparison in terms of how often the question asked in our performance. So we know if the question is asked frequently and our performance isn't where it should be, we know that there's an area of definite focus, and we just know how to use our time wisely. But you can see it has that Medfield state difference as well. And that again is an area that we use as just a guide to say anything above 10, we really want to make sure that we really look at. And then on the positive part is that we see anything that we're just knocking it out of the park. What are areas that we can really build on? And with that, that's a walkthrough of our most recent past year of MCAS data, and more specifically, how we use the data in our day-to-day work with our administrators and our faculty.
And then like the last big one. 3 big like presentations today.
There was a lot. I know.
I'd say well, yes, it's a comment, but the one that jumped out at me was the grade 6 ELA and the needs improvement was up to like 9%. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what item analysis you will do to, make corrections there or find the problem there.
Definitely working with the department chair on that.
Yeah, as I'm sure you are, but that was the one like number that stood out at me. And then I guess the only big thing, but I don't know where this will land, is now that, how we voted on MCAS, like kids are going to sit there and doodle a little more. So like we might lose all this awesome data that we just gave. So I would just, so we showed all the stuff about standardized tests, but like, what other data, I'd be interested to see what stuff that is like classroom grown and classroom assessed, how we use that.
And we're capturing part of that data catch is what are our benchmarks and what are our different forms of data that we use that we can capture and perhaps we can use as one other data point. Because MCAS is one data point, but there are other ones and examples of what benchmarks are there, what are things that are standardized between. And this is where the data literacy goes piece in terms of it is important because to have teachers understand that if you're going to standardize a test, even if it's homegrown, it's people. You're going to use the same test. You can't just pick.
That's great. I'm the same. It's like very hard with this, standardized test that creates value. I would argue is like all this stuff.
Right.
But it's so much harder to do. And now the way we vote in Massachusetts, it's like going to be, it's a curveball.
I hear you in terms of a little bit of a curveball, but we have captured. We have other sets of data that we collect besides MCAS. But in terms of, we're definitely looking at, for instance, a benchmark or a standardized test that happens across the grade level of section that happens at different points of the year, like unit tests or things like that.
So, well, the commissioner met with us on Tuesday to talk about this very issue because I think people are caught by surprise, and they're going to provide some guidance to us. That being said, they said it takes effect on December 4th. So that was something interesting because I think the legislature said prior that it wouldn't be enacted as it was currently written. And then there's really no action so far that we know of yet, but it's going to take effect on December 4th. So more guidance from DESE means they're not sure. We're still working on it. So I believe, from what I've been told by them, is that this board will make a decision on what it looks like for Medfield kids going forward. And the question that we asked the commissioner was, well, can't we just say you have to pass MCAS and make that the standard? So kind of go back to what we're doing right now. So they're not sure on that because we all have the same idea. That would be a really good way to do it. We kind of keep that as an important test for us. But we'll wait for guidance on that. I'm sure that in December we'll get something.
I knew this would come up, obviously, because I was going to ask, because I warned you all. And to Will's point, what are the standard? Are we doing STAR Math or STAR ELA today? You know, in our elementary programs.
Digital screening. We have screeners that we use STAR Math, and then for 6 through 12, we capture data through standardized in terms of our benchmark or our unit assessment.
But are those commonly deployed, or are they?
And that's something that's been part of the work that's been done over the last.
That's what Matt was talking about too. That's
okay.
Yeah.
When they're professional development.
It's been the common assessments so that.
We've been in that direction for
with the models, no scaling or anything like that. You can itemize and analyze. I guess that was my question: is especially with what Will was saying. How does this itemized report stand up against the itemized reports in our benchmark assessments? You know, we may have missed fractions, but you know, with our benchmarks, it should identify the same weaknesses, and we should have known about it because we're given those 3 times a year, right? So, and I guess that was
so.
Yeah.
Our illustrative math, for instance, we did a crosswalk of our standards against the unit test that is provided by all teachers in every grade level. So at different times, there are different unit tests, and together they actually created a nice variety in terms of the priority standards across a grade level. And we're able to then identify something, a unit test is taken quite regularly that students are quite used to, but it allows us to tease out in terms of how well have we tackled a particular standard and what adjustments we made. So we collected, for instance, at the end of year 1, we have those data, and that was used to make adjustments to the curriculum for this upcoming year. That's an example of everyday unit tests that teachers do in a way that we can actually, since we mapped it on to the specific standards, we can now make adjustments.
Do you do those electronically or?
Not well, some, but
not
as well as we like.
I remember Call Henry saying that he's been taking tests that way. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of the kids are writing by hand, so they'll get scored, and then the teachers will plug it in, and then we'll crunch the data from there.
Open Architects will do that for you if you buy it.
You're aware.
And then back to the MCAS question, you know, so I just happened, and I will tell this story, and I don't mind telling it publicly. I just happened to be at the State House on the Hill with our DECA Day on the Hill on Thursday morning. And the representative from Jamaica Plain who helped author that bill was very proud to come out and talk to the 250 students in the room. And I think was a little surprised when the question was asked, won't you still try on the MCAS because it's still going to be offered, won't you try just as hard? And they all said no. And I think there was some shock on that. And I am personally disappointed in the state's, you know, in the lack of foresight in this process. I thank you, Dr. Marsden, for sharing that, because until a statewide, I think the state should respond with a statewide benchmark assessment process where they purchase it for every district, so that we're all looking at the same data. Not because I think, you know, we can measure Maeve on her one time of taking MCAS and what her abilities are, but so that we can better identify, you know, improvement on just our level, but the state level as well. And then with that also, I would support adopting the MCAS until further notice as a requirement for, which may not be very popular in town, but I would recommend adopting some sort of standardized test especially if other communities are going to do the same.
Fantastic. In Medfield, by the 50% market is close, so when they're saying like it might not be popular, like I do think that Medfield spoke in favor of keeping it, even if it was a slight margin.
Oh, we got another data guru over here. I actually think I looked too. Was it close?
It was close, but I also think there's just confusion about how it was worded and a lot of it, right? So it'd be interesting, like in a year, like what, like people thought, like I don't know.
It was.
I just know talking to people, like that was the one that had the most conversation because people just didn't. Right? It's like which way do I vote? And people thought.
The reasoning given by the representative was around how it seemed to unfairly target, minority groups, subgroups, but only 700 didn't pass it, failing to see the bigger picture on how it was used. And I think that was my shock, I guess, from it. And I was shocked by the students I was with. Our students, the Wellesley students right next to us at another table, all saying the same thing. We know it was terrible, but how else are you going to measure, or how are you going to do it? And no, we're not going to try as hard. I mean, you're going to try as hard, maybe. I mean, not to jump this long. You don't have to answer that.
Or sister. She's their sister anymore.
No, she's done. That's right.
I think some percentage of people always like standardized tests. Those people try, no
Yeah.
matter what, right? Like, so it's not hard.
Anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the MCAS certainly is not perfect, but it's something. And it's a statewide standard that all kids must pass prior to graduation. And to think that you're going to have 351 different versions of graduation requirements is ridiculous.
Well, and I think to understand that just what we saw here, to be able to identify areas of improvement, even if this was the only test you give, right? Because it was always my critique that it's one snapshot, that you don't get the results for months later. You can't make just-in-time changes in your curriculum, but you can at least direct funding and targeting interventions and whatnot from a 30,000-foot view.
And those of us that were teaching prior to MCAS remember what it was like, and we know that MCAS is better for kids. Having a standardized test is better instructionally for kids.
Yep.
It's not teaching to the test, it's teaching standards that kids need to learn. And it was a lot different prior to MCAS, and I don't want to ever go back to what that was like.
Yep. So.
I would just like, I think all this data is great, and I know that I like the fact that all the analysis we can do, and we have some of this work done, because although our meeting and exceeding scores are higher than the state, like if some of these I still look, it's like a third of our students are partially meeting expectations in English. And we all know, like, it's not just about that. I mean, you need to read well to be able to succeed in your other subjects. So I just, and I know it varies by grade, but that still number is like 1 out of 3 are still like falling a little below. So I want to make, and I think that that's what we're doing, right? And I don't know if you pull out those students and you look at the other assessments, and is this more, some people aren't good at standardized tests, but then there might be a percentage of students who just, need the extra support.
Absolutely, and those are areas that we're definitely focused on. For instance, there's been tremendous work done in ELA, for instance, the elementary in terms of professional development. And we use this data, but we also use those other data points that we collect that really allow us to target and support in a really meaningful way.
But I do like right by the time it gets to 10th grade, it's like we almost have no one in that not meeting too.
Yeah,
so
you can see
over
that
time that like we are moving people off into that meeting, next meeting.
And always areas of growth for sure, and it's never enough for us to look at. And again, spotlight some of the tremendous practices, but also put areas of focus on areas of need.
This is awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, next up,
Architects.
So I have the narratives of a brief update. So we've started budget season in terms of all of our meetings. Michael and I have begun our meetings with department chairs, principals, and directors. So we had 4 today. We have about 3 or 4 each day going forward. So we're still at that beginning stage where we're taking in the information from what our folks want, what they're looking for in the budget, and that's kind of where we are right now. So at our next meeting, we'll have that first pass at what we're looking at for a budget. We'll have all those meetings done, typically 20 to 22 meetings or whatever, once we go through and enter all that in the spreadsheet. No surprises yet in terms of what people are looking for or amounts that we're seeing as far as budgets. So we'll have an update next time for sure.
not to keep talking about the election, but also, could you just remind us, Dr. Marsden, what approximate number or percentage of our budget is federally funded? Is it, it's in the entitlement monies?
$1 million. Yeah, so that's typically, and it fluctuates because sometimes we qualify for federal ones, sometimes we don't.
Yep.
So this year we don't. Previous year we do, and it all depends on what data they use to determine that. The last time we qualified for it, they told us you're a community on the cusp, so just don't plan on it because you might get it, and then if you plan on it, you might not get it. So the big one for us is 94-142, which is the one that we use for our special education staff, our teaching assistants. That's a really big one for us. That's over $600,000. Then there's some smaller ones in there that help us out with professional development, consulting, et cetera. So yeah, that would hurt if that's not there. That would hurt a lot. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Okay. Any other items since posting?
I don't have any Madam Chair.
On to the mobile technology task force update.
Sure. So we have, as you know, emails going to school committee or parents who want to participate. We sent that email out to parents last week, and today at 5 o'clock was the deadline. I think you have a flurry of folks that want to participate this week. So we're looking at having up to 8 teachers on hand with paid teachers and stipends to be on committees. So that's kind of what we have it budgeted right now. We'll have members of the leadership team as well, students and school committee members and parents. And we're looking to have after Medfield talks next week, and Dr. Walsh does her presentation and does some work with us. We're going to kick this off the first week of December. So I think that Michelle and I talked about this earlier today. One of the things I think we really need to do next week is establish what days we'll be meeting for the next 4 to 5 months and get those out to people and say, okay, this is kind of where we're at. Does this make sense or fit into your schedule? I think that's what we'll try to get that nailed down by early midweek next week and get that out to people so we can communicate that, because it's certainly a lot of people.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yeah, there was definitely a flurry yesterday.
And today, yes.
Our parent numbers look like, okay, cool, maybe everyone can do this. And now it's like, we're gonna have to figure out.
That pesky reminder.
I also think based on it, you almost need all those people, because then the people who will actually, right, you're gonna get drop off even if people said they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like to cut, like,
Yeah,
I know there's a lot, but I do think you'll get a little bit of drop off based on the timing and like.
I agree, and that's what we talked about today is perhaps, and obviously I know like the 2 people on the committee might have thoughts on this as well, or sorry, the task force might have thoughts as well, but you know, sending an email or creating a Google form that like has the specific dates and times and verifying, like having the individual who's filling out the form verify, like I'm committing to coming to all of these, because I think that was feedback from the school start time committee is we did have all these parents that said they would participate and then they chose not to, or they couldn't make it, or things happen, right? And like we understand things happen, but like if you want a seat at the table, we want to give you a seat at the table, but we actually want you to show up and sit in that seat, right?
Yeah, so when you guys have the dates, well, people are listening to this, like the communication will come after that. So like right before that's an ugly time, right before, but we have to do it that week.
Yeah, next week.
Next week we're going to do it. Because then, to be fair, some of the people said I wanted to be involved, and my schedule's really tough. So like even, you know, I don't know exactly what the number got up to this afternoon, but maybe 20 to 20, 15.
19. Just counted,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I just counted.
So 19 is the number, but honestly, some of those emails say like, and I can't do it right after school. So like.
Yeah, I thought a couple of them had good comments though. Like
Oh, yeah,
there's probably half a dozen who said they can't do it, but some of them said, you know, if there's a subgroup or you need additional hands to study something.
Right.
So you might.
But maybe that's part of the form, right? Like,
yeah,
you're committed to coming to these dates, or I can't make those, but please include me in some other, you know, sub-activity type, focus group type stuff.
We'll include everybody we can. It's
Yeah.
19, and then we'll figure it out. But we'll hear from us. What? So you said next week.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's late, so it's week after.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll give some time.
Yeah, we had and I would say that we had a conversation with Dr. Marsden yesterday. A lot of passion.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Which was good.
And I think too, like, you know, we spent a lot of time, I think over the last year, talking about the challenges of volunteers and the same people volunteering all the time. Like, I didn't recognize a lot of these names, and I thought that was really great. And I thought we had a really great span of parents across the district from the ages of their children, right? It wasn't just one demographic of parents. It was parents with, you know, younger kids and parents with older kids, and just this really great spectrum of people who are going to bring, you know, different viewpoints, but also just be able to represent where their kid is at and what the challenges are they're having. So yeah, I think it's great. I'm excited that we're going forward in this direction. Anything else? So I wanted to send them all an email. I have responded to every one of them, but I also wanted to send like an email tomorrow to just remind everybody and invite them again to Dr. Joe Walsh's thing on Tuesday, right? So if they didn't know about that already, like,
yeah,
clearly
pumping that up.
Clearly care about this, and we're so excited you care about this, and this is something that's happening on Tuesday that would be really great.
And it's Tuesday at the same time our girls are in the state semifinals.
Oh,
so it's gonna hurt her too.
Where's your game?
It's in Norton at 4:45.
Oh, she's not till 7 though, right?
So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, so
it's gonna be a double header.
But then the boys play right after.
Yeah, I think it's double header with the boys.
That's gonna hurt Dr. Jill a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure changes my plans.
Maybe we can stream it to the account.
Don't do that.
I'm in Utah, unfortunately.
Okay, anything else on that?
No.
Okay. School building committee update. Leo, you were there. Like, tell us what happened.
Yes, it was the most well-attended SBC meeting, I would say, around the selection of the discussion of the selection of the site. And there was some interesting, unexpected feedback around selecting the site early. But I think what it was is to show intention that could be communicated to the MSBA. So, but the bulk of the conversation was around why the idea of selecting a site to focus on. There was some questions whether or not that would be frowned upon by the MSBA, which is not true. So, but ultimately there was a vote to focus on the Dale site, but you know, with the understanding that feasibility may look at other sites if needed, including the Wheelock site. But the
may I interrupt?
Yeah.
How large was the camp?
Folks,
Not supporting that site, the Dale site.
Oh, I don't think there was. It wasn't about support or not support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was its right time.
Yeah, it was a gentleman who, and I recognize my I don't know who it is, but he was expressing, are we getting ahead of ourselves by selecting a site before the feasibility? And it launched us in kind of revisiting the past feasibility, the work that's gone into that feasibility, and you know, and the site work that's been done on the sites already. So, and I always tout is using that past work to expedite and not have to redo work on the next feasibility because of that work we already did. So, so we already have ton of information. So, and I think it was revisiting that, and that was the bulk of the conversation. And then about communicating, there was some asks from the audience around how to communicate that out. There were some questions about the surveys. There were some questions about the integrity of the surveys, particularly around the site selection. But I think ultimately the committee, you know, recommended to move forward with the focus on the Dale Street site, with the interest of getting a project moving forward with some direction, and reassuring at the same time to reassure the MSBA is, you know, that the MSBA knows that we're moving forward with some conviction on around one site, which we hope will be helpful. And then we ask that information kind of get communicated. We do send unsolicited communications to them, updating them on our progress. I believe, is it you, Dr. Marsden, or someone takes responsibility? Thank you very much for that. To let them know where we are before the decision that comes up. And then the next meeting hopefully will be timed just after we should hear something about whether or not our success, or whether we're successful this year or not getting back into the program.
and if, then that will steer a decision of what the next steps will be, up to and including a meeting with a joint meeting with the select board in early January. So to discuss those next steps, depending on the outcome of what happens in December. So
yeah, so the meeting got moved. We normally have it the first Wednesday of every December, got moved to December 11th. So the next SBC meeting will be on December 11th, and that was moved because we anticipate hearing.
And the 6th, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Oh, good news.
Okay.
That's great news. The committee seems like they're doing a great job.
Community engagement communication. Anybody have an update there? Mine was just around Medfield Talks on Tuesday, but I feel like we just addressed that. So, public school policy review process update. Tim and Leo?
Oh, we have good news yesterday. I'm not sure if it's in, right? I shared it with Leo because he's on there. But yeah, the policy is now digitized on their site. I don't know if it's up officially, but now, I mean, it's like, Maeve, I know you're going to be really excited. You get the table of contents, you click, and it just takes you there. You don't have to scroll through hundreds and hundreds of pages. So that's up.
It's on, yeah, it's
Oh,
on.
it's on site. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so let's watch the traffic. I mean, it's like our MCAS up into
Medfield, yep, there it is. Amazing. Thank you guys so much for this. I mean, I know we've talked about this a lot, spent a lot of time on this, but
I have a feeling there will be some errors in there, I'm sure. So,
Henry must be so excited.
but updating will be more streamlined. It's still up to us. There's some very strict rules. Yes. As to how it gets updated.
Okay. And then the last thing is superintendent evaluation. I owe you guys all a packet. This past week's been a lot of stuff going on, so I'll get that to you in the next day or two, and then we will send that back to me by the next meeting. So, any questions on that? Any informational items?
No, process on that though is a packet with basically goals.
Yes.
We evaluate. We share them back to you.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Informational items? And I were going to share. I feel like it already got shared by.
No, we just a few of us though that I thought that MASC was good last week in Hyannis. For me, the highlight was something called the Dignity Index, which I had never heard of, but it was a data guy. It was really cool. A guy named Tim Shriver talked about that, and it really was coming right off the election. So the idea is, dignity. If you're treating others with dignity, you score an 8. You don't want to score a 1. That's contempt. We all know that what that can do, and we saw it. But yeah, it was very good. It was amazing. I was really blown away by that specific session. So keep your eye on something if you ever want to see something kind of cool. And I hope Mr. Shriver can get in front of our leaders, the Senate and the House. That was great. Those are always good for a day.
Yeah.
Good for a day or two. Think differently.
Anything else? Our next meeting's on December 12th. I hear a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody.